Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss of internet shitlords, and I didn't even really particularly want to make this video, but a lot of people have been asking me about it, so I guess I will. So this video is to do with something that has been in the news lately, so because I put it off, right? When I first saw it, I said, oh, this is a nothing burger. Because I put it off, I think that by now a lot of you probably have heard about this, and you already kind of know a bit about this, right? So what I'm talking about is the section that you may have seen in other people's YouTube videos about anti-colonialist play, okay? And basically, okay, let's say, just in case that there's some of you that don't know about this, this came out. I don't know who was the very first person to put it out. It might have been Ryan David. I'm not sure. He was the first one I saw it from. And as is usual, now listen, I like Ryan. I think he's a good guy. But one thing I really don't like about him is when he posts something, he goes, look at these terrible people, these what does he call them again? These, oh, jeez. Because he has a very special term for what is basically, these woke people, right? But anyways, I forget the name of the word. I'm like turning into Joe Biden here. It's quite late for me. I've just come from a really big dinner. I'm not entirely straight right now, like not entirely sober, right? But anyway, Ryan David, he has this terrible thing he does where he always presents some photo, some image, or some statement, and then he doesn't attribute it. And he says he doesn't do that because he doesn't want to give attention to these evil people. What does he call them? Oh, I know you guys are going to all of you in the comments are going to be like telling me what the term is. Sparkle trolls. That's it. He calls it the sparkle trolls, right? Which is a stupid term. I'm sorry, Ryan, but it is. And I'm not really doing this. Isn't meant to be pick on Ryan David Day. It's just that you were the one I first saw this in, right? And so he has this page, and you look at this page, it says anti-colonialism in D&D is terrible. Well, anti-colonialism is required in D&D because colonialism is terrible and D&D is terrible and all this. It's all this terrible woke bullshit that's on this page, okay? That's for sure. And it looks, if you look at like the structure of it, if you look at the format the page is in, it looks like it could be a part of the DMG. And indeed, because of him and other people who have posted it and responded to it, but have not attributed to what product it was, there have been a number of other people that I seem to have, irresponsibly perhaps, but understandably, mistook it for being a page in one of the new Player's Handbook of 2025, right? Or not Player's Handbook, DM's Guide of 2025. And so they've been saying, like, this bullshit is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, okay? And it's wrong. Well, yeah, okay, it would be terribly wrong if it was. But it's not actually from the Dungeon Master's Guide, right? And the reason I didn't do a video about it is because it's from some crap little third-party product that no one really cares about and that was brought to attention. I get sent stuff like this very often, right, from a lot of people. And, I love it whenever, and don't get me wrong, I don't want you not to send me stuff. And whenever somebody sends me a private tip, right, sends me something interesting that I'm going to like, okay, and I'm always grateful for it. I might not end up using it, right? And some of the times when I don't end up using it, it's because you're pointing out something really awful, really stupid, really woke, really bad, or whatever else, but it's of some guy who has like an RPG that sold 2 copies, right? And nobody cares and nobody notices, right? So my policy on that is if this is too small, that you're afraid that if you're going to publish it, you're going to give attention to stuff, Ryan David, if you do that, if you fear that this guy is so low in the sales that just giving him negative attention might actually help him, and you don't want to help him because he's a bad person, then just don't publish it, right? If I had gotten this page and I was told, well, it's from this book, it's this third-party product, and it's not anything special, right? I just wouldn't have published it. I just wouldn't have bothered writing about it because it's not news. It's news if Wizards does it, but this isn't Wizards, okay? So anyways, what this page said was basically that Dungeons and Dragons is basically evil because it encourages colonialism, and it does that by suggesting that the player characters are heroic by going around and killing other intelligent humanoids, right, that are meant, obviously, it doesn't exactly say, it doesn't directly say, well, they're meant to be other races, but that's what they're implying, right? And they're saying that it is wrong as a DM, for example, to suggest that all the creatures of one race are going to be irredeemably evil, right? So you shouldn't say, oh, the village is being attacked by gnolls. The village is being attacked by gnoll bandits, which leaves the suggestion that a gnoll could be bad, but maybe there are good gnolls, right? And this is just stupid, because it's one of the fundamental problems of the postmodern perspective, right? The postmodern perspective tells us that everything is kind of like happening on this positivist material level, and that it's all just a question of narratives, and that there is no right or wrong or good or evil, and that also there's nothing that can be held up as an ideal, right? So no ideals are allowed, right? And when you have no ideals, it also means you can't have anything that is deplored totally, right? And that sounds like a good thing, but it's actually a bad thing, right? And of course, that's completely antithetical to fantasy, right? Because fantasy, be it in folk tales and stories and legends and myth and religion, in all of these aspects, right? They're not meant to have this strict materialist interpretation. On the contrary, they delve upwards into the world of archetype, right? No, an orc is not a Mexican or a black person. That's not what this is about, right? That would be a materialist metaphor. And of course, a communist will think like that, because a communist has, by definition, a materialist nature, right? They're obsessed, the old school communists were obsessed with the means of production and labor and the physical world, and they denied God, right? Obviously for them. And the new style postmodernist communists are obsessed with their bodies and gender and degeneracy and sex and abortions and all that. So they have no higher plane to work upon, right? But in actual myth by people who can create myth, and this is a big problem for the postmodernists, right? Because they can't create myth. That's why they're incapable of creating something that rises up to an ideal in a mythic form. The best ideal they can come up with is the person who's like the heroic crusader for social justice, right? But that isn't really very aspirational, right? Like compared to, say, King Arthur or Luke Skywalker, right? They can't make these. And every time they get involved in trying to remake them, they destroy them, right? Because they have to tear them apart. They have to deconstruct them. They have to say, no, an orc doesn't represent the corruption of nature, or a goblin doesn't represent the temptation of gluttony, right? Or of greed. No, they just represent Puerto Ricans and Laotians or something like that, right? Like they're just a reflection of white literature's racism, which is so retarded, so stupid. It's unbelievably stupid, right? But this is what they do, and so they're actually saying, and it is, we have to fundamentally accept that the RPG is a game that is rooted in colonialism and white supremacy, and we see and they cite kind of as proof of this that the archetypal game of D&D is a group of strong heroes coming to fight irredeemably evil monsters to protect a weaker group of people, right? And they say this like it's a bad thing, and of course to them they do believe it's a bad thing, right? Because that clashes with their own agenda, right? Like this is essentially the Daniel Penny thing, right? But they just want this in D&D. They're saying if your player characters kill a bunch of orcs to protect some helpless old villagers, they should probably be arrested by the crown, because who knows if those orcs were good or bad people or not, right? And then they maybe had other reasons. You need to let those orcs break into the general store and steal at least up to $400 gold pieces worth before they could be arrested, right? This is the mentality of what they're trying to push. So it's unbelievably stupid, right? But it's not an unbelievably stupid thing that Wizards is doing. Now, of course, I'm sure that the majority of people currently working on Dungeons and Dragons for Wizards would read that page and would say, yeah, we totally agree with this, right? So the one thing, ironically, that whoever it was who first published this, I don't even know if it was Ryan, it's just the first one I saw, but whoever is the first one that exposed this might have accomplished in this anonymity is that it got its attention to Wizards of the Coast, who, with other unbelievably stupid ideas in the past, like the combat wheelchair or, you know, the safety tools, are then going to try to adopt it and just try to ruin D&D even further, right? They've been a little too late to put it into the DMG, but they might put it into some future product. Yes, it's true. Right? Though it really won't matter at that point because, as I said in my last video of RPG predictions, I think that D&D is going to keep failing worse, and it's really going to be it's going to be a product that's going to be at a very low level of popularity by the time they come out with anti-colonial adventures. I guess that's what they'll call it, right? It's like Oriental adventures, except anti-colonial adventures. Yeah, that'll work. So yeah, they might do that. And you know, it's all fine. I just the only reason I'm even bothering to answer this is because so many of you demanded it, and because it's worthwhile to have talked a little bit about that difference, that problem of archetype, right? Like, no, monsters don't represent normal things from the normal world, and they never have. They represent abstract things from the abstract world, right? Like, you know, a dragon represents the force of chaos, right? It represents destruction. It can represent specific things that, you know, the chaos, the consuming of the world, right? Those sorts of things, depending on what version of the story it is. But it doesn't ever represent, like, a dragon isn't just meant to be a horse, right? Like, that's not how it works. And a gnoll isn't meant to be an American Indian or something like that. That's not what it's about. And if sometimes it's made into that, it's usually by people who don't have an understanding of myth, which means that they're probably leftists. So it's probably those people who are creating that. And it's just silly. It's just very, very silly to do that. So I guess that's pretty much everything I wanted to say right now. Yeah, I pretty much think so. Stay tuned. On this Sunday, I'm going to be having another episode of the RPG Pundit Encounter, and we are going to have a very, very special guest. You're going to be surprised. I will announce it closer to the date, right? But believe me, you're not going to want to miss this one, right? And not just if you're a D&D fan, because this is kind of going a little bit beyond that. You will see. But be sure to watch it. Put it in your calendar right now. This Sunday, the newest episode of the RPG Pundit Encounter with a very special guest. All right? So I guess that's everything for today. It's a short one, but you know, this is a short thing to talk about. I'll probably do another video before the RPG Pundit Encounter anyway. And so I guess we will see you then. Currently smoking. This is a what is this? Lorenzetti? No, this is a Nerup Hawkbill with Argento roots.